The morning sun cast long shadows through the massive windows of Galactic University Station Omega as students filed into Professor Zektar's xenobiology classroom. Jake Murphy adjusted his human-sized chair and looked around at his classmates. The room buzzed with different languages and sounds as alien students talked among themselves. Professor Zektar stood at the front of the room like a giant lizard wearing academic robes. His scales were dark green with lighter patches that changed color when he moved. Sharp crystalline spines ran down his back and his yellow eyes could look in two directions at once. He was from Korath Prime, where only the strongest hunters survived to adulthood. "Silence," Zektar commanded, and his voice echoed through the room. All conversation stopped immediately. Even the Vorthak warriors who feared nothing went quiet. When the professor spoke, Jake counted his classmates as he had done every day for the past month. There were 12 Vorthak students with their 4 muscular arms and gray skin covered in ritual scars. Each one carried weapons even in class because their culture demanded it. The 3 Etherian scholars sat together near the front with their delicate translucent wings folded against their backs. They were the smartest species in the galaxy, but physically weak. 7 Corvan students occupied the back rows with their rock-like skin and glowing crystal eyes. They were miners by nature and preferred dark spaces. Then there was Jake, the only human in a class of deadly predators and ancient civilizations. He had applied for the exchange program because Earth needed to learn about alien biology. The application process took 2 years, and Jake was the first human ever accepted into this program. "Today we begin practical application of everything you have learned this semester," Professor Zektar announced as he activated the holographic display. A 3-dimensional image of a sleek predator appeared in the center of the room. The creature looked like a cross between a panther and a dragon. It had 6 legs built for speed and leaping. Its hide could change colors to match any environment. Sharp teeth filled its mouth and intelligent eyes suggested this was no simple animal. "Behold the Nexari Ridge Stalker," Zektar continued with obvious respect in his voice. "These beings are apex predators on 12 different worlds. They are faster than a Vorthak warrior, smarter than most sentient species, more dangerous than a plasma rifle." Several students shifted nervously in their seats. Even the battle-hardened Vorthak looked concerned as they studied the hologram. "Your assignment is simple in concept but nearly impossible in execution," the professor said as his spines changed from green to red. "Each of you must capture 1 Ridge Stalker alive and unharmed within the next 72 standard hours." The classroom erupted in shocked voices speaking dozens of languages. The Vorthak students immediately began planning hunting strategies in their harsh guttural tongue. The Etherians whispered calculations about probability and success rates. The Corvans discussed which mining equipment might work as hunting tools. Jake raised his hand and waited. Professor Zektar noticed him after several minutes and pointed with one clawed finger. "Yes, human Jake?" "Professor, are there any restrictions on methods we can use to capture these creatures?" The professor's mandibles clicked together in what Jake had learned was laughter among Zektar's species. Several students turned to look at Jake with expressions ranging from pity to amusement. "Human, you may use any method you choose," Zektar replied. "Though I doubt your primitive hunting techniques will prove effective. Your species only recently developed spaceflight. The Ridge Stalkers have been perfecting their abilities for millions of years." More laughter rippled through the classroom. Jake felt his face grow warm but kept his expression neutral. He had dealt with this attitude since arriving at the university. Most aliens saw humans as newcomers who had barely crawled out of their caves. "Ridge Stalkers can leap 30 meters in a single bound," the professor continued his lecture. "Their hearing can detect a heartbeat from 100 meters away. They hunt in coordinated packs with tactical intelligence that rivals military strategists. They have never been successfully hunted by off-world species." A Vorthak student named Grath raised 2 of his 4 hands. His scarred face showed the confidence of someone who had killed dangerous prey before. "Professor, what weapons are we allowed to use?" "Any non-lethal weapons you choose," Zektar replied. Remember, the creatures must be captured alive and unharmed. Dead specimens are worthless for our research. This news made several students look even more worried. Capturing a dangerous predator alive was infinitely harder than simply killing it. The creatures inhabit the canyon systems approximately 50 kilometers from this station, the professor explained as new images appeared in the hologram. They are most active during the dawn and dusk periods of the local day cycle. Scanning. Equipment has limited effectiveness due to their natural camouflage abilities. Jake took careful notes on his datapad while listening to every word. Unlike his classmates who seemed focused on weapons and hunting tactics, he was thinking about something entirely different. Professor, what do we know about their social behaviors and dietary preferences? More clicking laughter from Zektar. Human Jake, these are not pets to be fed treats. They are killers that view every other species as potential prey. I understand, Professor, but surely they have specific behavioral patterns that could be studied? Your time would be better spent learning to use a weapon, suggested Grath the Vorthak warrior. Perhaps some of us could work together since humans are not built for hunting dangerous prey. Jake smiled politely but shook his head. Thank you for the offer, but I prefer to work alone. This statement caused even more amusement among his classmates. The idea that a human could succeed where Vorthak warriors might fail seemed impossible to them. As the class ended and students filed out discussing their plans, Jake remained seated. He continued taking notes and reviewing the holographic data. About ridge stalkers, their anatomy was fascinating. Their behavior patterns showed remarkable intelligence. Most importantly, their social structure suggested they were not just mindless killers but complex beings with intricate relationships. Professor Zektar approached Jake's desk as the last students left the classroom. Human Jake, I must advise you to reconsider working with other students. This assignment has defeated experienced hunters from species far more capable than yours. Jake looked up at the towering professor and smiled. With respect, Professor, I think there might be more than one way to approach this problem. Oh, really? And what revolutionary hunting technique does your species possess that has escaped the notice of civilizations that have existed for thousands of years? We'll find out in 72 hours, Jake replied as he gathered his notes and headed for the door. Professor Zektar watched the human leave with a mixture of amusement and concern. In 40 years of teaching, he had seen many overconfident students attempt impossible tasks. Most learned humility through failure. Some learned through injury or death. He hoped Jake Murphy would at least survive his foolish confidence. Jake spent the first night in the university library while his classmates gathered weapons and equipment for their hunting expeditions. The massive digital archive contained thousands of years of research on virtually every known species in the galaxy. He started with basic biology and worked his way through behavioral studies and ecological reports about Nexari Ridge stalkers. The creatures were remarkable examples of evolutionary perfection. Their 6 legs could propel them at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour across rough terrain. Their color-changing hide used specialized cells similar to Earth's chameleons but far more advanced. The camouflage was so effective that ridge stalkers could become nearly invisible even while moving, but Jake was more interested in their social behaviors than their physical abilities. Ridge stalkers lived in packs of 3 to 8 individuals with complex hierarchies, based on hunting success and strategic thinking. They communicated through subsonic frequencies below normal hearing ranges. Most fascinating was their territorial behavior, which followed predictable patterns over generations. Still reading about those death machines? Asked Pete Ironforge as he settled into a chair across from Jake. The Corvan student had become Jake's closest friend at the university. Despite their species differences, Pete looked like someone had carved a person out of granite and given him glowing blue crystal eyes. His people lived deep underground on their homeworld where they mined precious metals and gems. They were known throughout the galaxy for their honesty and solid practical thinking. They're not just killing machines, Pete, Jake replied without looking up from his datapad. Look at this social behavior study from 20 years ago. Pete leaned forward to see the holographic display Jake had activated. It showed a ridge stalker pack moving through canyon terrain in perfect formation. Each member had a specific role and position that maximized their hunting effectiveness. The lead female scouts ahead for dangers and opportunities, Jake explained, as he highlighted different pack members. Two flankers move parallel to maintain communication and prevent prey from escaping sideways. The juveniles stay in protected positions but still contribute by carrying supplies and watching for threats from behind. That's military-level tactical coordination, Pete observed with surprise. Exactly, these aren't mindless predators. They're intelligent beings with complex social structures and learned behaviors passed down through generations. Jake scrolled through more research files showing ridge stalker territorial markers and communication methods. The creatures used scent glands to mark regular travel routes between hunting grounds and den sites. They followed the same paths for decades unless forced to change by environmental pressures. Jake, buddy, I hate to break this to you, but all this research won't help if you can't actually catch one of these things, Pete said gently. Maybe you should focus on weapons training or trapping techniques. I am focusing on trapping techniques, Jake replied with a grin. Just not the kind most people would think of. He pulled up a new file showing ridge stalker dietary preferences and feeding habits. The creatures were primarily carnivorous but also consumed certain mineral deposits and plant materials for nutritional balance. They preferred fresh meat but would scavenge when necessary. Most interestingly, they showed strong curiosity toward unfamiliar food sources. On Earth, we have a saying about curiosity and cats, Jake murmured as he read about ridge stalker investigation behaviors. Your planet has creatures called cats? Pete asked. Small predators that hunt rodents and birds. They're known for being extremely curious about new things they encounter. Sometimes that curiosity gets them into trouble. Jake continued reading late into the night while Pete eventually returned to their shared dormitory room. The library's automated systems dimmed the lights, but Jake barely noticed as he absorbed everything available about his target species. Dawn was breaking over the station when Jake finally closed his research files and headed back to his room. Pete was still sleeping on his mineral bed designed for Corvan physiology. Jake grabbed a quick shower and changed clothes before heading to the equipment requisition office. The quartermaster was elderly, Vorthek named Thek, who had lost his fourth arm in some long-ago battle. He looked at Jake's requisition form with obvious confusion. Human, are you certain this is what you need for hunting ridge stalkers? Jake reviewed his list one more time. Lightweight carbon fiber cables, motion detection sensors, portable food, synthesizers, several kilograms of processed earth beef jerky from the human cultural exchange supplies. I'm certain, Quartermaster Thek. These supplies seem more appropriate for camping than hunting dangerous predators. Where are your weapons, your tracking equipment, your protective gear? I won't need weapons for my approach, Jake explained. Calmly, Thek's scarred face showed the expression Vorthak used when they thought someone was about to do something suicidally stupid. Human Jake, I have equipped hunting expeditions for over 30 years. Trust me when I say you will need weapons. With respect, Quartermaster, I'm not planning to hunt them in the traditional sense. This statement seemed to confuse Thek even more, but he processed Jake's requisition anyway. Military regulations required him to provide requested equipment unless it violated safety protocols. Jake spent the rest of the morning loading his supplies into a small transport vehicle designed for rough terrain. Other students were departing in heavily armed hovercrafts loaded with hunting gear and weapons. The Vorthak team led by Grath had enough firepower to level a small building. Good hunting, Human Jake, called out Zara, the lead Etherean scholar, as her team's elegant craft lifted off toward the canyon systems. Her voice carried the musical quality of her species, but also obvious doubt about Jake's chances of success. The Corvan team gave Jake respectful nods as they departed in their massive industrial transport. Their strategy involved using mining equipment to blast ridge stalkers out of hiding places. It was a typically direct Corvan approach that might actually work, Jake's transport was the smallest and least impressive of all the student expeditions. He had no weapons beyond a basic stunning device required by safety regulations. His equipment looked more like camping gear than hunting supplies. The drive to the canyon systems took 3 hours, across rocky terrain dotted with strange alien vegetation. Jake used the time to review his research and finalize his strategy. Everything depended on understanding ridge stalker behavior better than they understood his. The canyon region was a maze of narrow passages carved by ancient water flows. Rocky walls rose hundreds of meters on both sides, creating perfect ambush terrain. Jake could see why ridge stalkers had chosen this area as their hunting ground. He selected his location carefully based on geological surveys and animal tracking data. The spot was a natural bottleneck where 3 major canyon passages converged. According to his research, this intersection had been used by ridge stalker packs for over 50 years. Jake unpacked his equipment as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the canyon floor. His fellow students were probably setting up elaborate hunting blinds and weapon positions. They would wait for ridge stalkers to appear and then try to overwhelm them with superior firepower and technology. But Jake had learned something from his research that his classmates had missed. Ridge stalkers were not just predators to be hunted. They were intelligent beings who could be communicated with if someone took the time to understand their language and motivations. He began setting up his trap network with the precision of an engineer and the patience of someone who understood that the best hunters were also the best waiters. Every cable placement was calculated based on ridge stalker anatomy and movement patterns. Every sensor was positioned to provide maximum coverage without creating detection dead zones. The food synthesizers were his secret weapon. Instead of trying to mask human scents or blend into the environment, Jake was planning to announce his presence in a way that would intrigue rather than alarm his targets. As evening approached and the canyon filled with shadows, Jake made final preparations for what he hoped would be the most unusual hunting expedition in university history. The second day began with Jake making final adjustments to his carefully planned trap network. He had worked through most of the night positioning lightweight cables at precise heights and angles throughout the narrow canyon passage. Each snare was designed to restrain without causing injury based on detailed anatomical studies of ridge stalker physiology. The motion sensors formed an invisible web across the canyon floor capable of detecting the slightest movement from any direction. Jake had programmed them to work in sequence rather than simultaneously. This would allow him to track pack movements and anticipate their behavior patterns as they approached his position. But the most innovative element of his strategy was the food synthesizer array. Instead of using local prey animals as bait, Jake had chosen something completely foreign to this world. The processed earth beef jerky would create scent signatures unlike anything ridge stalkers had ever encountered. "The key is curiosity, not hunger," Jake muttered to himself as he programmed the final synthesizer unit. His research had shown that ridge stalkers investigated unusual scents, even when they were not actively hunting for food. The canyon walls amplified every small sound as Jake tested his equipment one more time. His communication device crackled with status reports from other student teams scattered throughout the region. "Vorthak team to base station," came Grath's deep voice through the speaker. "We have located ridge stalker tracks but no visual contact yet. Estimated pack size is 4 to 6 individuals." "Etherian team reporting," followed Zara's musical tones. "Our scanning equipment has detected subsonic communications consistent with ridge stalker pack coordination. They appear to be avoiding our position." "Corvin team here," announced the mining leader in his rocky accent. "We have identified 3 potential den sites and are preparing explosive charges to flush out any hiding creatures." Jake smiled as he listened to his classmates' reports. They were all approaching the problem like traditional hunters trying to force their prey into disadvantageous positions. None of them seemed to consider that ridge stalkers might be intelligent enough to simply avoid areas with obvious threats. His communication device remained silent. He had no intention of revealing his location or strategy to anyone who might be monitoring university frequencies. As morning progressed into afternoon, Jake settled into his concealed observation position overlooking the trap network. He had chosen a spot 30 meters above the canyon floor where natural rock formations provided perfect camouflage. From here, he could monitor his equipment and respond quickly when ridge stalkers entered the area. The waiting was the hardest part. Jake had trained himself to remain motionless for hours during hunting trips back on Earth, but this situation carried much higher stakes. Failure meant more than just returning empty-handed. It would confirm every alien prejudice about human capabilities and intelligence. His datapad showed real-time readings from all sensors positioned throughout the canyon. The afternoon heat created thermal currents that sometimes triggered false readings, but Jake had learned to distinguish between environmental noise and actual animal movement. Around midday, his communication device brought news of the first casualty. Medical. Team to Sector 7, came an urgent voice from the university base station. We have injured students requiring immediate evacuation. Jake felt his stomach tighten with concern for his classmates. Ridge stalker hunting was dangerous under the best circumstances, and several student teams lacked experience with apex predators. What happened out there? Asked the base station coordinator. Corvan mining team encountered a pack while setting up explosive charges, came the reply. 3 students injured but stable. The ridge stalkers disappeared after the initial contact. This news confirmed Jake's suspicion that aggressive hunting tactics would fail against such intelligent prey. Ridge stalkers had survived as apex predators. By avoiding unnecessary risks and learning from dangerous encounters, his motion sensors registered the first significant readings around 3 in the afternoon. Something large was moving through the canyon system approximately 2 kilometers from his position. The movement pattern suggested multiple creatures traveling in coordinated formation. Jake activated his equipment from the observation position using remote controls. The food synthesizers began releasing carefully calculated amounts of processed beef jerky scent into the afternoon air. The alien aroma would travel through the canyon carried by natural air currents. Within 30 minutes, his sensors detected movement much closer to his position. Whatever was out there had changed course to investigate the unusual scent signature. Jake's heart rate increased as he realized his theory about Ridge Stalker. Curiosity was about to be tested. The creatures approached with caution that demonstrated remarkable intelligence. Instead of charging directly toward the scent source, they circled the area and approached from multiple directions simultaneously. Jake watched his sensor readings and realized he was dealing with military-level tactical coordination. His first visual contact came as shadows, moving along the canyon walls. The Ridge Stalker's color-changing hide made them nearly invisible, even when Jake knew exactly where to look. He counted at least 4 distinct movement patterns suggesting a medium-sized pack. The lead animal appeared, first as a barely visible distortion in the air near the first food synthesizer. It moved with fluid grace that reminded Jake of Earth's big cats, but with an alien intelligence that was both fascinating and intimidating. Ridge Stalkers were more impressive in person than any holographic display could convey. The lead female was roughly the size of a large lion, but built for speed and agility rather than brute strength. Her hide shifted through different color patterns as she investigated the strange scent. Jake held his breath as the creature approached the first bait station. This was the critical moment when his entire strategy would either succeed or fail catastrophically. If the Ridge Stalkers detected any threat, they would disappear into the canyon maze and never return. The pack leader extended her head toward the synthesizer unit and inhaled deeply. Her body language showed intense curiosity, mixed with appropriate caution. After several minutes of investigation, she made a soft subsonic sound that brought the other pack members closer. Jake watched in amazement as the entire pack gathered around the first bait station. They communicated through sounds below normal hearing range, but their body language clearly showed animated discussion about this unprecedented discovery. The beauty of Jake's trap design became apparent as the pack investigated further. Instead of a single snare that would capture one animal and frighten the others, he had created a network designed to contain the entire pack. Simultaneously, without causing panic. As the ridge stalkers followed the scent trail deeper into the canyon, they triggered sensors in sequence. Each activation released fresh synthetic scents from strategically positioned stations, drawing the pack exactly where Jake needed them to be. The creatures moved through his trap network like dancers following choreographed steps. Their natural pack coordination worked perfectly with Jake's understanding of their behavioral patterns. Within an hour, the entire pack was positioned exactly where he needed them. Jake activated the final phase of his plan as sunset approached, and the canyon filled with long shadows. The moment had arrived to discover whether months of research and preparation would result in success or spectacular failure. The Ridge Stalker pack moved through Jake's carefully prepared canyon with the fluid coordination of apex predators who had survived countless hunts. 5 magnificent creatures followed the trail of synthetic scents deeper into the trap network. Without realizing they were being guided by human intelligence and patience, Jake observed from his concealed position as the pack leader investigated each bait station with increasing curiosity. Her hide shifted through subtle color patterns that he had learned indicated intense interest mixed with appropriate caution. The other pack members maintained defensive positions while allowing their leader to investigate the unprecedented scent signatures. The largest male stayed alert for dangers, while 2 younger adults flanked the group to prevent potential ambush from the canyon walls. An adolescent female remained in the safest central position but still participated in the investigation by processing scent information and communicating findings through subsonic frequencies. Everything was proceeding exactly as Jake had predicted. Based on his research into ridge stalker social behaviors and pack dynamics, the creatures were following their natural instincts, which made them predictable despite their intelligence and adaptability. His communication device crackled with updates from other student teams throughout the region. The news was not encouraging for traditional hunting approaches. Etherian team reporting complete failure, came Zara's voice tinged with frustration and exhaustion. Our technological solutions proved ineffective against ridge stalker natural abilities. Recommend immediate withdrawal to base station. Vorthek team has located an engaged target pack, followed Graf's battle-scarred voice. 3 ridge stalkers escaped after brief contact. 1 team member requires medical attention for minor injuries. We are continuing pursuit, but success appears unlikely. Jake felt sympathy for his classmates even while focusing on his own critical situation. They were all intelligent beings trying their best with the knowledge and abilities their species had developed over thousands of years, but none of them had approached the problem from the angle Jake had chosen. His motion sensors showed the ridge stalker pack reaching the final convergence point, where all canyon passages met. This was the location Jake had selected for the culmination of his trap network based on geological surveys and decades of animal tracking data. The pack leader paused at the entrance to the convergence area and made several subsonic calls to her companions. Jake interpreted this as a final safety check before entering what could be dangerous terrain. The response calls indicated all pack members were alert and ready for potential threats. "Smart girl," Jake whispered with genuine admiration as he watched the creature's tactical coordination. "But hopefully not smart enough to detect what's really happening here." The ridge stalkers entered the convergence area in perfect formation, with each member maintaining optimal position for mutual protection and escape routes. Their movement patterns demonstrated the kind of tactical thinking that had made them legendary among galactic predators. Jake waited until all 5 creatures were positioned within his trap network before activating the final sequence. His finger hovered over the control interface as he made final visual confirmations of every pack member's location. The trap activation was almost anticlimactic after hours of careful preparation. Lightweight cables contracted silently around the creatures, legs with precision calculated to restrain without causing injury. The network engaged simultaneously to prevent any pack member from escaping or assisting others. Within seconds, all 5 ridge stalkers were securely but safely contained by Jake's engineering and planning. The creatures reacted with surprise. Rather than panic as they tested their restraints and realized they were trapped but unharmed, Jake descended from his observation position with emergency medical supplies and mild sedative compounds he had synthesized based on ridge stalker physiology. The pack watched his approach with intelligent eyes that showed wariness but not the desperate fear of animals facing death. "Easy there," Jake said in soft tones as he approached the pack leader. "Nobody's going to hurt you. This is just temporary. While we get acquainted." The female ridge stalker tilted her head at the sound of his voice and made several quiet subsonic calls to her packmates. Jake interpreted this as tactical communication about the unprecedented situation they found themselves in. His sedative compounds were carefully calibrated to calm the creatures, without causing unconsciousness or disorientation. Jake had spent considerable time researching ridge stalker neurochemistry to ensure the substances would be both effective and completely safe. Each animal received individual attention as Jake monitored their vital signs and stress levels through portable scanning equipment. The pack leader showed obvious intelligence as she observed his gentle handling of her companions and seemed to understand that no harm was intended. "You're incredible creatures," Jake told them as he completed his medical assessments. "Far more impressive in person than any research data could convey." The ridge stalkers remained calm throughout the entire process, which confirmed Jake's theory about their intelligence and adaptability. They recognized that he posed no immediate threat and were conserving energy while evaluating their situation. Jake's communication device buzzed with an incoming transmission from the university base station. "All student teams report status immediately," came Professor Zektar's commanding voice. "Deadline for assignment completion is 18 hours. Jake activated his transmitter for the first time since beginning his expedition. Human Jake reporting successful capture of 5 ridge stalkers. Request immediate transport to university for specimen delivery. The communication channel went silent for several long moments before Professor Zektar responded. Human Jake confirm. Your transmission? Did you report capture of 5 specimens? Confirm, Professor. 5 healthy, uninjured adult ridge stalkers ready for transport to university facilities. More silence followed by rapid conversation in what sounded like several alien languages speaking simultaneously. Human Jake, maintain your position. Transport team is departing immediately for your location. Jake smiled as he looked at his captive. Audience of magnificent predators. The hard part was over, but the most interesting moments still lay ahead when he would demonstrate to his classmates and professor that there were alternatives to traditional hunting methods. The ridge stalkers watched him with intelligent curiosity as he prepared specialized transport containers designed for their comfort and safety. These creatures deserved respect and careful treatment, regardless of the academic requirements that had brought them together. Within 2 hours, a university transport arrived with medical teams and specialized equipment for handling dangerous specimens. The pilot was a Corvan engineer named Rocky, who stared in amazement at Jake's successful capture. Human, how did you accomplish this without weapons or heavy equipment? Rocky asked as they loaded the sedated ridge stalkers into secure but comfortable transport pods. Patience and understanding, Jake replied as he monitored the creature's vital signs during the loading process. Sometimes the best way to catch something is to let it come to you. The flight back to Galactic University took 3 hours, during which Jake continued caring for his temporary captives. The ridge stalkers remained calm and alert throughout the journey, which suggested they were adapting well to their unusual circumstances. As the university station appeared ahead, Jake felt nervous anticipation about presenting his results to Professor Zektar and his classmates. He had succeeded beyond his wildest expectations, but the real test would come when he demonstrated what he had learned about ridge stalker intelligence and behavior. The xenobiology classroom had been transformed into a presentation arena when Jake arrived with his transport containers. Word of his impossible success had spread throughout the university, and students from other departments crowded around the viewing areas. Professor Zektar stood at the front of the room with his crystalline spines shifting through agitated color patterns. Other student teams were displaying their results with varying degrees of success and failure. The Vorthic warriors led by Grath had managed to wound 2 ridge stalkers but failed to capture either creature alive. Their hunting party showed obvious signs of combat with torn clothing and minor injuries from their encounters. Zara and the Etherian scholars presented detailed sensor readings and behavioral observations, but admitted complete failure in their capture attempts. Their advanced technology had proven ineffective against ridge stalker natural abilities and tactical intelligence. The Corvin mining team displayed fragments of destroyed equipment and medical reports from their injured members. Their aggressive blasting approach had succeeded only in driving ridge stalkers deeper into the canyon maze where they became impossible to track. Jake's arrival with 5 transport containers immediately drew everyone's attention. Professor Zektar approached with obvious skepticism mixed with curiosity about how a human could accomplish what experienced alien hunters had failed to achieve. "Human Jake, present your results for evaluation," the professor commanded in his formal, academic voice. Jake activated the first transport container and carefully released its occupant into the classroom's secure containment field. The pack leader emerged with fluid grace and immediately began investigating her new surroundings with intelligent curiosity rather than panic or aggression. Gasps echoed through the room as students recognized the perfect condition of the captured specimen. The female ridge stalker showed no signs of injury or trauma from her capture experience. Her hide shifted through calm color patterns that indicated alertness without stress or fear. "Incredible," whispered Grath, the Vorthak warrior. "The creature appears completely unharmed by the capture process." Jake released the remaining 4 ridge stalkers one by one until the entire pack was reunited within the containment field. The creatures immediately resumed their natural social behaviors and began communicating through subsonic frequencies that filled the room with barely audible harmonics. Professor Zektar examined each specimen through the containment barrier with growing amazement. In 40 years of teaching, he had never seen ridge stalkers captured in such perfect condition or displaying such calm behavior in captivity. "Human Jake, explain your methodology," the professor demanded. "How did you accomplish what military hunting units have failed to achieve?" Jake activated his data presentation showing detailed research files and behavioral analysis compiled during his preparation period. The holographic display filled the center of the room with months of careful study and planning. "Professor, you told us this assignment was about understanding predator-prey dynamics," Jake began as he highlighted key research findings. "I realized that traditional hunting approaches treat ridge stalkers as simple animals to be overpowered through superior weapons or technology." He showed tracking data from his canyon expedition demonstrating how the creatures had moved through his trap network following predetermined behavioral patterns. But ridge stalkers aren't simple animals. They're intelligent beings with complex social structures and learned behaviors developed over millions of years of evolution. Instead of fighting against their nature, I worked with it. Jake's presentation continued with detailed explanations of his trap network design and scent-based luring strategy. His classmates listened in fascination as he described using ridge stalker curiosity and intelligence as assets rather than obstacles. The key was understanding that these creatures investigate unusual phenomena even when they're not actively hunting. Their natural curiosity made them predictable despite their intelligence and tactical abilities. Professor Zektar studied the behavioral data with obvious interest. "Human Jake, your approach demonstrates remarkable insight into xenobiological principles. But how did you develop such understanding in so short a time?" "Research, Professor. Your university library contains decades of observational studies that most people ignore because they're focused on hunting rather than understanding," Jake activated another section of his presentation showing ridge stalker social dynamics and communication methods. The captured pack demonstrated these behaviors in real time as they maintained formation within the containment field. "These beings aren't our enemies, Professor. Their potential lies if we take time to learn their language and motivations. The most remarkable part of Jake's demonstration came when he began interacting directly with the ridge stalkers through the containment barrier. Using subsonic frequency generators he had built based on his research, Jake attempted basic communication with the pack leader, the female. Ridge stalker responded to his artificial calls with obvious recognition and what appeared to be cautious acceptance. She approached the barrier and made several complex vocalizations that Jake interpreted as curiosity about his unusual communication attempts. Fascinating, breathed Zara, the Etherean scholar. The creature appears to understand that you're attempting to communicate rather than threaten. Jake's final surprise was the specialized meal he had prepared for the ridge stalkers using university food synthesizers and nutritional data from his research. Instead of standard captive animal feed, he had created a feast designed specifically for their dietary needs and taste preferences. The creature's reaction to the meal was unprecedented in xenobiological observation. They showed obvious pleasure and satisfaction as they consumed food that appealed to their sophisticated palates. Several pack members made what Jake interpreted as expressions of gratitude through their subsonic communication. Professor Zektar watched in stunned silence as his supposedly primitive human student demonstrated mastery of concepts that challenged everything the professor thought he knew about predator-prey relationships. Human Jake, you have accomplished something remarkable. Today, you have shown us that true understanding comes not from domination but from communication and cooperation. The other students gathered around Jake with newfound respect as he prepared to release the ridge stalkers back to their natural habitat. His success had challenged every assumption about human capabilities and intelligence. How will you transport them back to the canyons? Asked Pete Ironforge with genuine curiosity about his friend's methods. Jake smiled as he activated remote monitoring equipment that would track the ridge stalkers after their release. The same way they came here, Pete, carefully and with respect for their intelligence and dignity. The transport back to the canyon systems became an impromptu field trip as Professor Zektar and several students accompanied Jake to observe the release process. The ridge stalkers remained calm during the journey and showed obvious recognition of familiar terrain as they approached their home territory. Jake released the pack at the same convergence point where he had captured them 2 days earlier. The creatures emerged from their transport containers with obvious relief to be back in familiar surroundings. The pack leader paused before disappearing into the canyon maze and looked back toward Jake with what he interpreted as acknowledgement. She remembers you, observed Professor Zektar with amazement. Ridge stalkers have never shown recognition behavior toward other species before. The tracking data over the following weeks confirmed that Jake's capture and release had no negative effects on the pack's hunting abilities or territorial behaviors. If anything, the creatures seemed more curious about other species and less automatically aggressive toward unfamiliar scents. Jake's research methods became required study material in xenobiology programs throughout the galaxy. His approach demonstrated that intelligence and patience could accomplish what brute force and advanced technology could not. More importantly, he had proven that humans brought unique perspectives to galactic civilization despite their recent arrival. Professor Zektar would later write in his academic journals that Jake Murphy had taught him more about predator-prey dynamics in 1 week than he had learned in 40 years of traditional study. The human species continued to surprise everyone with their ability to find unexpected solutions to impossible problems. 6 months later, Jake received a communication from the Canyon Research Station reporting that the Ridge Stalker Pack had established regular contact with human researchers. The creatures had learned to recognize human scent signatures and showed no aggression toward careful scientific observers. The pack leader had even begun teaching her offspring to investigate rather than attack unfamiliar phenomena. This behavioral change spread to other packs in the region, creating the first documented case of interspecies cooperation between humans and ridge stalkers. Jake's success opened entirely new fields of xenobiological research focused on communication rather than domination. Universities across the galaxy began recruiting human students specifically for their unique approaches to seemingly impossible problems. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome was the message Jake received from the Ridge Stalker pack through subsonic frequency analysis.